השאירו אבן לרגלי, ומה אני אשאיר אחריי? האם אשאיר איזה דבר? איני רואה את צעדיי, איני רואה את צעדיי, ומי יראה אותם מחר? היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד כשקרן. היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד בעת צרה. אני אחיך אל תשכח, היה לי חבר, היה לי אח. המקום שאליו אני הולך, היו נשים, היו גברים, ואהבה גדולה הייתה. האם אני אמצא אותה? הם לא השאירו לי סימן, לא הנחות וגם לא פרחים. הם לא השאירו לי דבר, הם לא השאירו לי דבר, מלבד אחים וחברים. היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד כשקרן. היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד בעת צרה. אני אחיך אל תשכח, היה לי חבר, היה לי אח. המקום שאליו אני הולך, אני נזהר שלא לשבור, אני נזהר שלא לדרוך, אני נזהר שלא לזכור. וטוב לי שאתה איתי, וגם אתה וגם אתה. תישאר אחרי לכתי, החברות אשר הייתה. היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד כשקרן. היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד בעת צרה. אני אחיך אל תשכח, היה לי חבר, היה לי אח. היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד כשקרן. היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד בעת צרה. אני אחיך אל תשכח.
אנחנו ניקח עוד כמה דקות, ניתן לעוד אנשים לעלות ומיד נתחיל.
במקום שאני הולך, היו רבים כבר לפניי, השאירו שביל, השאירו עץ, השאירו אבן לרגלי, ומה אני אשאיר אחריי? האם אשאיר איזה דבר? איני רואה את צעדיי, איני רואה את צעדיי, ומי יראה אותם מחר? היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד כשקרן. היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד בעת צרה. אני אחיך אל תשכח, היה לי חבר, היה לי וגם לא פרחים. הם לא השאירו לי דבר, הם לא השאירו לי דבר.
היא רשמה את זה.
היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד כשקרן. היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד בעת צרה. אני אחיך אל תשכח, היה לי חבר, היה לי אח. במקום שאליו אני הולך, אני נזהר שלא לשבור, אני נזהר שלא לדרוך, אני נזהר שלא לזכור. וטוב לי שאתה איתי, וגם אתה וגם אתה. תישאר אחרי לכתי, החברות אשר הייתה. היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד כשקרן. היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד בעת צרה. אני אחיך אל תשכח, היה לי חבר, היה לי אח. היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד כשקרן. היה לי חבר, היה לי אח, הושט לי יד בעת צרה. אני אחיך אל תשכח.
באמת? לאן הלך?
Okay. נמנו.
Shalom, everybody, and welcome. My name is Alon Moore, and I'm from Colorado. We're very happy to see you all on this Sunday, and welcome to the IAC Geffen Donors Club event. This week, our IAC family has lost a great visionary, philanthropist, and dear friend, Sheldon Adelson. No words can truly describe the magnitude of this great man and his deep love for the state of Israel and to the Jewish people. If I had to choose two things to remember him by, they would be his strong belief that the IAC can be a game changer in building a strong community with Israel in heart, and how he led by example and inspired us with philanthropy and giving. We intend to keep his legacy alive by continuing the important work of the IAC. We also know how much it meant to him to have partners in his philanthropic journey, and we thank you all who have made and or increased your gifts this year to support the IAC. We're thinking of Dr. Miriam and her family during these difficult times and send our heartfelt condolences. As we're all our family, we wanted to take 5 minutes and help you get to know each other better. In a few seconds, you will be prompted to join a breakout room. When the prompt comes up, please join. In the room, you will meet 2 other people. Please take a few minutes to introduce yourself, your name, where are you from, what is your connection or relation to, to the Yom Kippur War, if at all. Please be brief, as we will gather back in 5 minutes sharp.
שנזמין טכנאי לעשות רמקול בקול רם. מה הטעם לשבת בזוג כשלא שומעים טוב? עכשיו היא הולכת לדבר? והיה סינקלר? וזה עכשיו שיר?
לא, אפשר.
Michelle, do you think the rooms work? I hope they do. See, I see some people in the room. So,
רגע, אני רואה פה את משפחת מור מישראל. אומייגאד.
נכון?
מה שלומכם?
מצוין.
טלי,
כן,
נראה לי שאתם לא מזהים אותי.
לא,
מרוב שאלון שם אותי על דיאטות.
טלי, אני
אלון שם
וולקוב.
אותי על דיאטות קשוחות, אז אתם לא מזהים אותי.
אנחנו כן מזהים אותך.
מה שלומכם יקרים?
שלומנו טוב.
מתגעגעים אליכם בקולורדו.
קצת כואבים אחרי שהתחסנו הבוקר, אבל נקווה לטוב.
טוב לשמוע שהתחסנתם. חיסון שני?
כן.
אחלה, איזה יופי. כמה אופטימיות יש בכן הזה.
while we are here, I want to say hello to Ron Roman. How are you? Okay.
נהדר, רק זה רן.
זה רן, אז למה רשום רון?
בעיקר להטות את האויב.
אוקיי, אז אתם אלה שמשום מה לא נכנסתם לחדרים. יוסי, מה השאירו אותך פה לבד? אני אציע אותך, יוסי.
מה שלומך? השאירו אותי לבד.
זה לא בסדר, הנה אני מכניסה אותך לחדר.
לא, אני בסדר, תני לי לשבת בשקט בחוץ ולשמוע, תחזירו אותי בחזרה אחר כך.
נחזיר, אבל אני מעבירה אותך בכל זאת.
אוקיי.
רגע, נראה. אני לא יודעת איך אני חוזרת. יוסי, מה הקשר שלך ליום כיפור? אנחנו נעשה 2 דקות, זהו, אני סוגרת. נחזיר את כולם. היי ג'ייקוב.
היי, מה שלומך?
טוב, מה שלומך? היית בחדר אחר והוצאנו אותך בטעות?
לא, הייתי פה בחדר 4, אבל אף אחד לא היה שם.
וואו, אז הנה, כולנו תכף חוזרים. ג'ייקוב, מה הקשר שלך ליום כיפור? אני בטוחה שיש לך קשר חזק מאוד.
הייתי איש חטיבה 7, יצאתי מנפח בערב יום כיפור, הייתי מפקד מחלקה בחטיבה של שריון, הייתי ממש ליד עמק הבכה.
וואו. ותגיד, אתה ראית את הסדרה שעת נעילה?
כן, כן.
זה יהיה מאוד מאוד מעניין לשמוע.
לא אהבתי אותה.
מאיזה סיבה?
ראשית כל ראיתי את זה באנגלית, לא יכולתי לראות את זה בעברית משום מה.
אבל יש את זה באתר סדרות בעברית, אני אשלח לך את הלינק אחר כך. אז כולם חוזרים. Everybody is coming back from the rooms. We are sorry there wasn't a lot of time, but wanted you to know each other even just a little bit. So Alon, take us back to the program.
Thank you, Noah. Welcome back. If we have here anyone who has served during the Yom Kippur War, please make a sign, raise your hand, thumbs up, or write us in the chat room. We want to thank you for your service, and no matter which unit you serve or where during this war, we are life and freedom to you and all the soldiers of the Yom Kippur War. I would like to thank IAC Council member from New York, Gadi Slade, who introduced us to Yohan. I'm now pleased to introduce my fellow IAC Council member from Philadelphia, A.B. Shamir, and our distinguished guest, the producer, co-writer, co-creator, Mr. Yaron Zilberman. Yaron Zilberman directed, co-created, and co-wrote Valley of Tears, an HBO Max and a Cannes 10-episode drama series about the 1973 Yom Kippur War. Valley of Tears premiered at the competition section of Series Mania Festival. His film Incitement about the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin won the Israeli Academy Award, the Ophir Prize for Best Picture of 2019, and premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. Yaron also directed and co-wrote and produced the internationally acclaimed A Late Quartet, about the world-renowned New York string quartet as its members struggle to stay together on the eve of their 25th anniversary, starring Academy Award winners Philip Seymour Hoffman and Christopher Walken. Yaron's first film, the feature-length documentary Watermarks, was co-produced with HBO and Arte. It tells the story of the champion women swimmers of the esteemed Jewish sports club Hakoach Vienna as they reunite in their 80s to swim together one more time in the city they were forced to escape from 65 years earlier. Abi, to you.
Hi, this is Abi Avraham Shamir would be my full name. I was at the war. I was in the regular forces, a captain, company commander, tank company commander in the Suez Canal. It was a little brief for me as I got wounded on the first night and got evacuated back to the hospital in Israel. Yaron, it's a real pleasure to have you here and an honor. I have watched riveting all the series, and it got to a point where I was shouting commands to the driver down, stuff like that, because it got pretty intense. I would start with a question. What brought you to make this series? How are you related to it? And what kind of were you trying to get? Why now?
Okay, I'll answer all that. Just a note, Noah said that it might be in Hebrew. I don't mind answering in English at all, but Noah, is it like in English or Hebrew?
We'll do this one in English. Yes,
English.
We definitely
Okay,
have English speakers friends here.
Okay, perfect. And secondly, I just want to mention before I answer that we have one of the actors with us, Lee Biran. So if you want to also put him in the spotlight, and at some point we'll discuss that too. That would be cool. Lee Biran played Yoni, who is the son of many who just arrived to Israel months before the film started. Hey, Lee. What's up?
We are so happy to see you alive, I have to say.
Thank you. That's exactly what my grandma said after she watched it. Thank you. Very nice to see you all.
Pleasure.
All right, and we might have another friend soon, so if I'll see him, I'll mention that too. So to your question is this. So the show actually was in the making, in development for 10 years before, not before, 10 years before, yeah. They approached me for the second time. So I was approached about 5 years ago with the show. It was a movie, in a movie sort of structure. I read it and I felt that it wasn't time for me to make that movie at that time for various reasons. And years later, when I got it again, now as a 8-episode TV series, which eventually turned into 10 episodes, I realized that now was the time to make this movie. So my connection to the war is that in 1973, I was 7 years old. I was born in 1966. And I remember vividly, the war starting. We were supposed to go as a family to Kenya on a safari. already got all the injections, the vaccinations, was very excited, and suddenly there was a siren, and I mean, not a siren, it started at 6 a.m. for our family, because my stepfather was an airline, was an Air Force pilot. And in our, I grew up at that point, I'm originally from Haifa, but at that point, I grew up in Herzliya Pituach. And so Herzliya Pituach was a neighborhood where many Air Force pilots resided. And a phantom arrived and sort of descended very, very low to make the famous boom that the airplanes do. I mean, in such speed. And it woke up all the pilots. That was the signal for all the pilots to get into their cars and just drive to their base. And that's what happened. And for about 6 months, my stepfather was away, basically. And I remembered my mother with all her friends, which were, you know, wives of other pilots, sitting in sort of at home, waiting for news. And occasionally news arrived that one of the pilots, you know, is either just died or captured, or, you know, other catastrophes. And I remember that sadness related to that. And also the fear. There was an immense fear, which I felt. I was 7 years old, but it was the first time, and I think the only time in my lifetime, that we felt that Israel might be conquered by Egypt and Syria from, you know, together. And that, you know, with the Holocaust being, you know, so recent at that point. I mean, we learned about the Holocaust in high school as if it happened yesterday. So there was that kind of feeling associated with that war, which was really horrific and scary. And so that was my connection. And therefore, when I read the material, it was already, in a way, very dear to me and very important to me on a personal level, not just on a historical slash, you know, Israel history point of view. So I approached it in that way. The difference was between the first time that I received the material to the second time was really about me. In between these times, I made a movie called Incitement about Rabin's assassination. And
by the way,
thank you. And I, in a way, I became a more advanced artist, so to speak, meaning I had a very important experience in between. And I suddenly realized how I can bring into the material meaning from my directing, my rewriting, from my you know, co-creating it. I realized that I can bring meaning that before that movie, I did not have that sort of approach to the material. Suddenly I realized that the meaning is for me to bring on in full force.
So I noticed that we had the side of the war, but you also chose to pay a lot of attention on other topics, like social topics, like even something that became more, we became more aware of, like the people on the continuum, like Avinoam, something that I never thought of or knew about when I was in the military. And yet it's pretty clear now that it was part of it, or even the role of women also. So if you can elaborate a little more on your choices there.
Sure. So in terms of, you know, in general, the approach to the project, it has some kind of an epic feel to the project, meaning it's not just about a specific battle. Let's say we could have chosen, you know, Tersaki, which is that hill that we call 87. We could have approached it that way, and that would have been a different, you know, project altogether. But the approach, showing it from different angles, different ages, we have Yoni, which is Libby, plays in, you know, in such a profound way. So there's a father-son relationship, and you have a sort of a Avinoam and Yoav, which is kind of a older brother, younger brother type of relationship, like a mentor type of relationship. We have the, you know, that unit, the army, the tank unit, which is another microcosmos of relationships within that war. As you said, as you mentioned, there's Daphna, the woman. So we realize that this has more of an epic kind of feeling, although it's very intimate and lyrical, it still have that feeling. It has that feeling. And we thought that bringing in issues that were important in 1973 to Israel society, for example, the Black Panthers, the Israeli version of Black Panthers, the whole tension between Mizrahim and Ashkenazim, which was, building in a major way. And we know that in 1977, 4 years after the war, as a consequence of the war, Begin took power for the first time after a long ruling of the, Mapai. And that was partly reinforced by Mizrahim voting for Begin, who gave them for the first time a true voice. So there is a relationship between this war and the future of Israel and what Israel is, and that particular conflict within society that we found to be connected very strongly. So we went with that and we embedded into the story. Some research showed that actually happened. Many complained that in their units that wasn't the case, but it's always in this way because we chose to tell stories. I mean, these characters are part of many other stories combined. So each person combined many stories, and that's why we told that. And extra, the same with the woman, just to involve that part because that's also based on a true story. It's actually based on true 3 stories that are combined into Daphna, etc., etc. So that's the reason. It has to do with the fact that it was a historical story, like when you do, Tolstoy, and you have, big stories.
War and Peace.
Exactly, you do War and Peace. You embed in the story many angles of society, and you make a statement about it, what you feel about it, what you find important in it, etc., etc. So
yes.
that's the reason.
Definitely, it all worked well together, except when they were arguing when they were supposed to load the tank. That was annoying to me. Come on, load the tank. But I forgot to mention that people can write questions on the chat. Alon will bring up those questions in just a few minutes. So you're welcome to write any questions.
This is a moment for me to say that Omer Perelman also joined us. And Omer was Caspi in the show.
Caspi.
Caspi is here too.
Yeah, now you can hear me. Hello, hey everybody. Nice to meet you.
Pleasure having you, Caspi.
So we have the opportunity also to ask Omer and Lee questions about their roles and their approach to the characters.
Right. And then obviously you also put a lot of emphasis on post-traumatic disorder, all the issues that at the time were ignored.
Yes. I'm glad that you mentioned that. That's for me a very important topic. So what happened is during the research, I met many soldiers who fought, that war, and especially fought the battles that we are zooming in on. And what I realized is the stories they told me always invoked the trauma, and in many cases, I experienced their post-trauma from that event. And people were very emotional and had breakdowns. So when I realized that was for me sort of an insight. The story has to focus on that part. Because again, that's what I heard from these soldiers who were there. They were traumatized. They wanted to speak about it. They needed to have that voice. And I thought that could be something that can have a huge effect on Israel society, and maybe even worldwide eventually, to show that aspect of war, why war is so terrible, why war, we should try to avoid war I would say at all costs, meaning we have to fight, put all our effort to try to avoid wars. And if we have war, if it happens, we must embrace the soldiers and take good care of them and understand not just the physical wound, but also the emotional wound, which in many cases, according to what they told me, is much harder and harsher than the physical one. It's the unseen wound that it was so important for them to express. So we try to express, and we have by luck, 2 actors here that really showed, projected 2 different types of traumas. And I can just mention, Lee, when in episode 3, at the beginning of episode 3, when the unit, including Caspi, meets, Yoni in the show, and on his face, you can already see the trauma that his vehicle, I forget if it's APC, it's called, Nagmash in Hebrew, BTR in this case, we see the result of the shots that actually Caspi was inflicted on them. We see the trauma on both sides, because we see also Caspi taking ashes, or sand, and throw it on his head in a type of a mourning situation. So this is just an example how the 2 of them experience trauma and already projected. So with your permission, if you don't mind, let's hear them talk about acting and showing, revealing that trauma and how they approached it.
Sure, it will be interesting. So Omer?
Yeah, so I did a big research about PTSD, and I met soldiers from the war. So then the war didn't know yet what is like PTSD and the shell shock. They give it a name just in the 80s. So the soldiers didn't know how to to tell the emotional experience they had, but you can hear that they remember every small details. Like, think about it. If you try to remember what you did like 1 week ago, you will remember like generally the things, but they remember every minute of it. And there is a lot of shame and blame. And when they talk about the friends from the war, and the shame that they alive and their friend died, or you can understand. So yeah, I believe that something in our country and society make them believe that they can't really tell their emotional side, because it can makes them like weak. So yeah, I think this is why it's so important. And another thing, the trauma and the PTSD is something that's still moving from one generation to another. And we've been in the Knesset together, and we hear a woman, and she's a daughter of a soldier from the war, and she explained how the trauma of his father affect her life and her children's life. So it's why it's so important to take it to the front of the stage and talk about it.
Good. Thank you, Omer. And Lee?
Well, me and Yaron had a bunch of conversation about that before. And what I did is I imagined what it was like to lose the person that is closest to you suddenly, just like that. And then I was living a certain moment that I'm sure that will happen in the future. And I imagined that I am in this moment right now, and then Yaron says action, and then I'm inside a certain moment. It's pretty intimate, so I'll keep it to myself. But that moment was, the tears that you see, both in my eyes, and I know that in Omer's eyes, because he's my colleague, and I love him very much, and he's very talented. I had the pleasure to work with both of these guys. they were real. I mean, there is something that you call tear stick, if you're familiar with the term. It's like a certain thing that you put under your eyes when you're acting, and it brings tears in your eyes. No tear stick, man. Nothing. It was real tears that came from really connecting to something real. And also Yaron, in his very special way, he's a true leader, and he led this team through everything. So he made sure that our environment will be very authentic and receiving, and it felt, it's funny because you're in the most dangerous battle of your life, but you felt very, very safe to do what you needed to do in order for this role to to become alive and to become real and to become authentic. And
I imagine that actually your role in some ways is more difficult because you had to be more motionless, where Omer was going all crazy.
Yeah, you had fun.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to keep a little bit watch for time. One last question for me, and then we'll open for discussion. Tell us a little bit, Yaron, about the organization of all of this. This looks pretty involved, pretty complex.
Yeah, that was the I would say the first major element that I had to look into as a director, but also as somebody who, I receive a budget. There's a big budget, and they say, take that money and make sure that eventually you deliver this show that we are trying to make. And if you don't do it right, then it either looks bad, meaning the war is not convincing, the battles are not convincing, everything seems very sort of, on a, not convincing, that's the word, small, for such a production. So that's something that I had to take care of. And you have to work also as a producer at that point, meaning thinking how to make this happen. So the first thing that I did was to choose, I took out 30 pages from a script, which is quite a lot. That was the first thing, just like looking for things that I can avoid shooting. And by that, I'm saving money. And then I put the money we have into things that are important to make. So that was my sort of first thing, is let's try to minimize in a way. Eventually, we went out with 8 scripts and we got back with 10 episodes. So we got 2 more episodes for free, so to speak, meaning with the same money, same budget, same scripts, we got 2 more because of the way we worked. And that's a big story by itself. Secondly, you have to sort of realize what is the minimum that you have to have in order for this to be real, for this to work. For example, you need a minimum of 1 tank, an Israeli tank from the period. These tanks are no longer in service. How do you find them? How do you make them work? How do you make them look as if they are, mint, although, they're already 50 years old. And the same with, you need 1 Russian tank to serve for the, the T-52, the Syrian tanks, which is Russian originally. So you have to have that. We called it Tiran in Israel. How do you find at least 1? We found 2, luckily, but these kind of things. And also when you film Hermon, I mean the post, Hermon post, to find the corridors, the ta'alot, how you call them?
Tunnels or...
The tunnels, the underground tunnels. And you have sort of 4 levels down. How do you find that so that we can actually film that? That was for me like a number 1 on the top list. And I knew if we had this equipment and these locations, plus the you know, the minimum amount of scenes to tell these stories, then we're going to be fine. And so it was a sort of a struggle that took 6 months to find that balance.
It was convincing, I can tell you that.
Thank
I have
you.
to say something with your permission, of course.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think that Yaron, he was both a conductor here, and that was a big orchestra to conduct. And also, I mean, he also wrote the music. So he had his hands on both things, and he was just driving this two-wheeled car and every wheel has its own like responsibility, and that was crazy. I mean, that was crazy just to witness it, you know, from the side. And I think that is maybe what made us such good friends at the end, because we saw Yaron. I mean, he didn't sleep for 2 years, man.
I hope he
didn't
doesn't
sleep
have
for 2
post-traumatic
years.
disorder.
And I know his family, and I know it from, you know, I know it's real. He had no rest for 2 years. How do you do that?
Let me see if I can open it up for more questions.
Yes.
Alon, any questions on
Yeah,
the chat?
there's a question from Paula. She's asking, this is a question to Omer and Lee, if they've learned anything about the war that they didn't know before they landed their roles.
Excellent.
Wow, that's a good question. Omer, would you like to start?
Sure. Start, baby. It's
Me?
yours.
First of all, let's just say this. I mean, we have studied the war. I mean, where we were, and you know, at school. But we knew about the borders. We knew very little. Let's be honest. We knew very little, and this project, I think it's like it's a national project, you know, in disguise of a series on television. But that's a national project, and I think the first thing I learned a lot about the war. I learned from this project. I learned a lot about what soldiers was, you know, what they've been through, and also I think that this series provided an opportunity for the young generation to learn about, you know, Yom Kippur War, and also to get a glimpse at like behind the scenes about the personal sacrifices. And that's something that I think a lot of people, the young people, the younger audiences, and also the older, didn't really know about, you know, the personal sacrifices, and it makes you think, you know, and reflect about your life here, and about, you know, what's important, and about solidarity, and the fact that, you know, you cannot take this place for granted. I mean,
right,
the fact that we live here, and we don't live in peace, right? We don't have peace here, really, but you still, you can live here, and you can raise your children here, but then again, you send them to, you know, to the military again. And I hope we won't need those personal sacrifices anymore. And I hope,
but we have to be ready too.
No, we have to. I mean, come on, it's reality, but
right.
You know,
Alon, any more questions?
Well, I think the question was also to Omer. I don't know if he has an answer.
Yeah,
and then there's another question. Yes.
Is another questions? The same question.
No, so the question to you, Omer, is what did you learn about the war that you didn't know before you took the role?
I think the series is about, as Libby and Leon said, it's about people. It's about the personal story, and we learn about the historical details, the year and the places, but we didn't have the faces. And when you have the face and you have the person, it becomes more real to you. And I think when you are trying to understand someone else's trauma and someone else's story, you also brings your story into this work, this art, and you start to feel the emotions of the soldiers and to understand them, and you have this special connect with them, and the story of the war becomes personal to you, from a national story to a personal story. I think this is the main thing.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Any questions to Yaron, Alon?
Yeah, there is one from to Yaron from his friend Gadi. Now that you've researched so much on the war, what are the biggest misperceptions about it?
Wow.
That's a good question.
That's a great question and a tough one, because there's so much talk about the what's called, the Mechdal, the big, how would you say Mechdal? Libby, help me here too.
Oh, let me use Google Translate. Wait a minute.
But anyway, the idea of the surprise attack, that we were not ready, that mainly the intelligence forces did not do a good job in predicting that the war will start and when would it start, when there were so many.
By the way.
Excuse
I
me?
don't know. It's neglect.
Neglect, okay. But it's mainly, the war was a disaster from an intelligence point of view, and that everybody knows. And what I learned during the work, that I was surprised to see how deep that was, how deep of a miscalculation that was, because at the end of the day, there were so many soldiers, that watched and saw Egyptians' movement towards Suez Canal. They saw, the tanks moving towards the northern borders by the Syrian army. People saw, and nobody wanted to analyze and see what's so obvious about to happen. So that's, I think, the big thing. But for me, the major realization was, and that's something that I'm saying, that there argues about it all over the place. People write articles about it and books. So, but this is what I learned. So I'm mentioning only my point of view. The way I see it is that in 1967, Israel occupied Sinai and the Golan Heights. For two main reasons. One reason is because they could. There was a war and there was that opportunity. And first, when you are at war, you occupy, and then you're supposed to negotiate and return for peace. So that was on 67-day war. And then, the 6-day war. And then the Syrians wanted to get back the Golan Heights, and the Egyptian wanted to get back the Sinai Peninsula. And Israel did not want to return this land for security reasons. They said, we don't trust you anymore for the Arab countries. We need a buffer zone for security in case you start a war. We need that distance between, main Israel to the borders. And so that's why they kept it. And eventually what the Arabs did, which is so obvious, is they built an army. They made it bigger and bigger and bigger, until at one point they felt, that it was time to start a war and hopefully to get back that territory, which the Egyptian eventually received back, and the Syrians did not until today, because it's a different kind of territory, of course. So for me, that's what I realized, that my feeling that the Arab countries want to take over Israel was not necessarily the case. The case was that they wanted their land back, and they used war in order to get it back. So that was one big thing that that was a misperception. And the second one related to that is that And that's why, that's why I think they stopped. They only needed like a small advance into Golan Heights. They just wanted to have some kilometers, into Sinai to negotiate and take it back. That was the idea. But for us, I mean, war is war, and once war starts, you are all in, and that's what happened. And eventually, we managed to stop the Egyptians in Sinai, and the Syrian actually went all the way almost 30 kilometers from Damascus, which was really wild in terms of how things changed. So I would say that was for me the profound understanding. And again, it calls for that we were able in some way to avoid this war. It was possible, in my point of view. That's what I realized.
Have you planned on continuation, another series in the Sinai or something?
So there are talks about that. In Israel, Kan 11, which is the network that invested and broadcast the show, is interested, but they also provided only half of the budget. The second half came from HBO eventually. So HBO needs to decide, and it depends on the numbers in America. They're just checking, and also internationally, they check the numbers. As soon as they'll get an answer, they'll probably have their own internal meeting and decide if they want to move on or not to a second season. A second season could be on the South or Lebanon war, the next war, which is right now there's a discussion whether we're going to go this or that direction.
You're going to get in deep trouble there.
I personally want to do the South. I think it's a must. And I personally already deep into research. I'm meeting soldiers in the South that fought that war against Egypt. I'm only on a daily, almost on a daily basis. Tomorrow, I'm going to travel to Ashkelon, and I'm going to travel to Givat Brenner to meet two soldiers that are related to a particular battle that I'm zooming on. And no, actually, it's the battle on the Suez town, the city of Suez, which is the last day of the war. I'm going to mention the Chava Sinit, I'm going to mention everything, but I'm just saying that the focus of the battles will be the last day of war. So the concept is, if the first season is on the first day of war, we see how, the before war and war starts, is to go into the last days of the war, into how the war ends. So we have a beginning and an end, and that's the way I'm approaching it currently. But it's in the stage of research, and anything can happen in research. Depends on what I'm going to discover.
Nice.
So let me jump in. So when they asked me to co-host this with AB, I was kind of smiling because I was a year old during the Yom Kippur War, so not much to contribute. So I want to ask people, and some of you raised their hands, to basically share a couple of minutes of your own story. If Zev wants to jump in, or Nati, or Neville, or anybody that's interested in sharing their story in a couple of minutes. I'm sorry, it's a 2 minutes to ask you to summarize a few days is hard, but I would appreciate that. Zev, how about you start?
Okay. First of all, thank you. And my name is Zev Rubinstein. Currently, I'm Vice President of Israel Bonds. In 1973, I was a soldier in what we call Ugda 36 under Raful, and this is the unit that was caught by surprise. We all went home to celebrate Yom Kippur, and we didn't have cell phones then, and suddenly a truck stopped in the middle of Haifa. You don't see trucks or cars in Yom Kippur. And a soldier jumped out, ran to my apartment, pulled me out in uniform, and we had to go for the synagogues, one synagogue after the other to take people out. Nafach was my base, the where אוגדה 36, Unit 36 was there. A few hours after, on Yom Kippur, we had the sirens. We didn't finish the sirens and we saw the Syrian tanks. We didn't have to look for more Syrian tanks. These days, there were many coming like ants on us. We were lucky that they suddenly stopped on the end of Golan Heights, right before the Kinneret, because they got scared that there is a surprise, that the Israeli military is doing an ambush on them, because how come they got so far in the Golan Heights without any shots? They didn't know that while they were running into the Golan Heights, we were carrying tanks on the mountain going through Tzfat. And because we didn't have trailers to drag the tanks were going on their own, climbing up to, and then a few hours we encountered the war, the real war. It was a very bloody war. Now seeing the series brings me a lot of memories, a lot of friends that when I come to Israel to visit, I'm going to visit them in the cemetery. And I think that it's a very good series. I bless you for that. I commend you for that. And thank you, Noah, for what you do at IAC and that you invited us. Thank you. I am not going to take more of your time, but it's a very emotional moment for me right now. Thank you.
Thank you,
This
Zev.
is Neville
Neville?
Pokre. I'm speaking
Wow.
from Las Vegas. Should I speak? Is that okay?
Yes, please.
So when we went to the Chadarim, the person I met was Avi, who's hosting this evening. And turns out that I was a new immigrant to Israel, and I was sequestered at Meir Hospital in Kfar Saba for 6 weeks because most of the doctors were sent to the Chazit, to the front lines. I was a young nephrologist. We were very busy for 6 weeks. I slept in the hospital most of the time. It was extremely busy. And Abi told me that he was in that hospital as a soldier. So it took us some 45 years to meet each other. No, 47 years to meet each other. But that was a good thing that happened tonight. The good thing that happened to me is that I looked around for the prettiest and loveliest nurse in the hospital, and we got married. We've been together for 45 years.
Good thinking, good thinking.
So the war had some terrible memories, but some good ones for some of us. And thank you for allowing me to talk briefly at this meeting.
Yeah, I was wounded, so I got there to the hospital on Sunday morning and stayed there for 2 weeks, and then joined the forces on the other side of the Suez Canal.
I will tell you that we recognized, well, the forerunner of what's now called PTSD, we recognized that many of the injured and soldiers in that hospital needed help. There was a psychiatric hospital nearby. We consulted with them, and who knows, it may have been in some way the forerunner of the change in approach and understanding of what happens when you're in a terrible situation.
I was born in this hospital, just saying.
Wow.
Going there.
Meir Hospital came alive this evening.
Oh yeah, Kfar Saba's on the map. Born and raised.
Thank you, Neville and Abi. Johan, do you want to say a few words?
Myself?
We have someone that Johan is the IAC chairman in Las Vegas, an orphan actually from the Yom Kippur War, and I thought we might give him some time to say something.
Wow.
I'm not an orphan. My father happened to get killed in the 6th day of the war in Mazrat Bejan in Syria. But I have a question for Yaron. I wonder why you are concentrating on research on the Battle of Suez on the 24th and 25th of October, which is a terrible mistake that the IDF did by trying to get in. I don't know who ordered it. There are still questions of who ordered that attack. It seems to Sharon, but is there any political connotation here?
No. Again, as I said, first of all, because the first season was the beginning, and this marks the end. So the first I want to mark an end, not like a middle or a particular battle, but rather from beginning to an end of a war, and see how it closes. That's the first reason. In addition,
isn't the end of the war is the day before, 2 days before? That the IDF was trying to make a vice grip move and occupy a city, which was a terrible tactical mistake that cost 58 lives.
More than 58, yes. Just to mention before, because our time might be short, to say that Arik Sharon did not order that. The person who ordered that was Moshe Dayan, and he ordered that to the head of Pikud Darom, which was Gorodish, into his Sgan, into Bren, etc., all the way to the soldier. So it's a questionable. It's a story that I think shows a lot about what war is all about. The decisions of generals should be much more sort of responsible. The responsibility of generals, the responsibility of politicians making decisions of that level, the pain that soldiers have to endure when such wrong decisions are being made, error decisions. Some people, by the way, claim that it was a smart decision to go about it, actually including the chief of staff of that time. And some of the commanders that I am interviewing also insist that it was a smart thing to do, despite the casualties. And for me, it brings about all this conflict that war brings about. And also, when I speak to the soldiers, I see the courage in order to save each other's lives and in order to save the wounded. And this whole situation brings about, everything that I find to be important to tell: the camaraderie and the sacrifice and what the soldiers do, and the responsibilities for the people above them who makes the decision to make wise decisions, responsible decisions, and show it. Excuse me?
So it is a political statement. It's not really a history and not analyzing.
No, not at all. It's totally history, because that's what happened, and that's how the war ended. So it's history. There's nothing here that is not history, but it's the closing of the war rather than middle of the war. And I find that to be the most dramatic thing to talk about.
Thank you, Johan.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Johan. Thank you, Yaron, as we're running out of time. Before we end, I'd like to invite my fellow council member, Doron Malka from San Diego, to say a few words as well.
And then we have another little surprise to you. So
So first of all, thank you, Yaron, Omer, and Lee, for not just for the work that you do, but also for taking the time to share it with us today or tonight for you. So I really appreciate it. I wanted to take just a minute of your time, everyone, to just talk to you about OFIC. I'm sure you've all heard about OFIC, this incredible program platform that it's a distant learning educational platform for Israeli Americans, for Jewish Americans, for anybody who loves Israel and loves Hebrew. And I think that what we know from what we can appreciate from Shat Ne'ilah is the fact that it's not just talking about the war and the history, but also about the Israeli culture behind it and throughout that war. And it's some elements that our next generation is missing, not just the language, the Hebrew language, but also the Israeli culture. And OFIC is doing a brilliant job at connecting and providing them access to what is, to Hebrew and Israeli culture, anywhere from Bialik through Omer through Shlomo Asi, all in Hebrew. And so I encourage you to, one, check it for yourself. It's for adults and kids. Invite your friends, your family, and anybody that you know that might be interested in learning about Israel in Hebrew or learning Hebrew, period, adults and kids, to join. It's ofikhub.org. Again, ofikhub.org. And I'm sure you'll find a lot of value there. So thanks again for the time.
תודה, דורון.
Alon, 1 second. I just want to say, I don't know if there were already 2,000 people that went through OFEC just this past few months. And this is an amazing way to keep on Israel history legacy and teach people from anywhere around the world about that. So thanks, Doron, for introducing OFEC to that.
I got a couple more words, and then at the end there's a surprise, so don't go anywhere. Thanks everyone again for attending, participating, and contributing to this fascinating conversation, and especially to Yaron, Lee, Omer for taking the time to be with us. I look forward to seeing you in all of our upcoming events. On January 27th, International Holocaust Remembrance Day, Yom HaShoah, the story of the son of a Nazi who converted to Judaism and became an IDF officer. Please bring your whole family to this fascinating event. And on February 21st, updates on the Middle East and recent development from Iran and Middle East with Alon Ben David. These will be insights that you'll not hear anywhere else besides here. Please be safe, stay tuned, and stay healthy, of course. And one more surprise here, Noah.
We can't hear you.
No.
Okay, Yaron, do you want to introduce our surprise?
Yeah, I just want to say that we're lucky and fortunate enough to have an incredible musician among us here, which is Lee Biran. He's an actor, but also at the same time a fantastic musician. And I asked him to prepare a song for us. And with his permission, if you can just add that, I think it would be beautiful. What?
Oh my gosh. I'm like, I'm like the guy next to the bonfire, that the only guy that knows how to play guitar, I'm like that guy.
Yes.
Wait, but we didn't know this thing is going to be an English speaking event.
But it's okay. You can do it in Hebrew.
Thinking in Hebrew is perfectly good.
Although if you want English, maybe we have something on, maybe we can do some English too.
Good. It opens this possibility too. What do you want to sing, Lee? It's your choice. You can sing in English as well.
I want to sing Frank Sinatra, but I don't know how to play it. So I'll sing something I can play. Actually, I thought about singing a song in Hebrew, but I feel like it'll be rude because some of the people here won't be able to understand it. So if we'll sing something in English, everyone will be able to understand. And the song that comes into my head is a song we all know. I don't remember the words. I need to. But it talks about the, about some.
I think people would love Hebrew.
Yes, Lee, go ahead. Do it in Hebrew, and I will translate your song in the chat for our English.
Oh my gosh.
We want to hear your original song.
Oh, all right. So let's do that. Yeah. Okay. My original song is by Ehud Banai. And this song, Ehud wrote. He wrote this song for his dad after his dad had a heart attack, and it was Yaron's idea, because the father and son situation that we have in the series. In our series, it's the other way around, but still, it's called Al Tifchad, don't be afraid. Ata lo levad, you're not alone. So let's see if I get this right. All right. אל תפחד, אתה לא לבד. אל תפחד, אתה לא לבד. הייתה זאת קירה קטנה, זעזוע פתאומי ומהיר. נכון, איבדת שליטה לרגע, לא היית מספיק זהיר. ועכשיו פעמוני הזוהרה מצלצלים בראשך. אתה רוצה לשכוח, להתחיל מההתחלה. אז תאמין שאם קלקלת, אתה יכול גם לתקן. כן, כן, אל תפחד, אתה לא לבד. אל תפחד, אתה לא לבד. אם יחזור שוב רגע הפחד, אבוא להושיט לך יד. תמיד אהיה קרוב אליך, לחבק במקרה שתירא, שתירא, שתירא. ועכשיו פעמוני הזהרה מצלצלים בראשך. אתה רוצה לשכוח, להתחיל מההתחלה. אז תאמין שאם קלקלת, אתה יכול גם לתקן, לתקן. אל תפחד, אתה לא לבד. אל תפחד, אתה לא לבד. That's all I got.
תודה רבה.
תודה.
Thank you very much. My pleasure, guys.
Thank you again all for joining. Be healthy, be safe out there, and we will see you at the next event soon.
תודה ירון, תודה
Thank
לשחקנים.
you, guys. Take care. Be safe.
חיבוק, ביי.
ביי ירון.
תודה רבה לכולם. ביי.
תודה.